it should be binaural, like you'll hear that in one ear and that in the other. We'll see. Alright, so let's get right into today's case. This is a really, really bizarre case. And this case is from 2016, but it is brand new again in the news due to a recent arrest. So, what's old is new today. So this is the case of the mysterious disappearance of Supermom. She was called Supermom back in the day. Supermom Sherri Papini. She went missing on November 2nd, 2016. And she reappeared 3 weeks later. I'm not gonna say the exact date, but it was 3 weeks later. Now let's go ahead and get into what exactly happened, or what we know about what happened. So, Sherri Papini was born on June 11th, 1982. She grew up in Northern California in a rural area called Redding, California. And she had 2 parents and a sister. And she had a pretty normal childhood from what we know. Okay, just based on what we know, which isn't, we don't know all the details of her childhood, but from what we know. Now, in 7th grade, she met Keith Papini, and they had a little, middle school romance. They shared their first kiss, and it was all very sweet. But, as expected, they parted ways, And she met a man who she married in 2006. He was a sergeant of a platoon in the armed forces. But their marriage did not last. And they were divorced by 2008. At which time she somehow managed to run into Keith again. And they rekindled their old romance. And they got married in 2009. And from the photos, it looked like a beautiful, beautiful wedding. And they looked like the most perfect couple, So, they had 2 children, and by the time that November of 2016 rolled around, her son was 4, and her daughter was 2, and she was a great mom. She did everything for them. She was super organized. She baked the most delicious pies, it was said in a documentary. first thing he does is he takes a photo of the phone. Okay, he does not touch it. Because he's already thinking, this could be evidence. I'm not gonna touch it. And he calls up 911 and tells them the situation, that his wife is missing. So they come down to the house, they check it out, they look at the phone. They think that the phone looks a little bit staged, It didn't look like somebody just dropped it or threw it, but it looked like it had been placed there because the earbuds were, neatly put on top. But regardless, they had to launch a full-fledged investigation and try to find Sherri. Now Keith, he went on the local news to, reach out to everyone to help find his wife. And he was just very emotional, very upset. I mean, who wouldn't be? His wife is missing. The mother of his 2 little kids. And he starts a GoFundMe because he wanted to hire his own investigator to help and look for Sherri. Even though, the police were doing everything that could be done, and volunteers were coming down, everyone is trying to find her. And donations got up to about $49,000 in the GoFundMe. And even a anonymous donor came about who said he wanted to donate money for ransom. Not as a reward to somebody who finds her, but rather a ransom, so that the perpetrator could bring Sherri back unhurt. So that's like a whole big sordid story, but I don't think it's very important, truthfully. But ultimately, he offered $50,000, and somebody other than this guy remained anonymous the whole time, so a different person came out to, make that announcement to the public. But nobody came to get the ransom. Meanwhile, 3 weeks later, it was Thanksgiving morning at like 4 in the morning in 2016. Somebody sees what turns out to be Sherri wandering along Interstate 5, I believe, in the county of Yolo. Okay, no disrespect, but I just love the name. Yolo County. Alright, so, anyway, when they saw her, she had chains around her waist. She had some kind of bindings on her wrists. She was just looking completely dirty, disheveled, emaciated. Just a complete, mess. Now, the person who spotted her did not, pull over to help her, personally, because, as a smart woman, she, you never know, right? You just never know if that's some kind of a scam to get you and then carjack you or whatever. So, she just pulled over and called once she was able to speak, because in the beginning she just couldn't, she was too traumatized. But after some time passed, she explained that she had been out jogging in her neighborhood, and a car with two Hispanic women who were masked. They abducted her at gunpoint and they brought her somewhere. They locked her in a closet, chained her to a pole. They gave her a bucket of kitty litter to use as a toilet. They repeatedly beat her and tortured her, and they chopped off her hair. And they didn't speak English, but it was her understanding that she was going to be trafficked, and that's what they had, taken her for, and that's why they had branded her, because she was going to be sold to a cop, and he wanted the branding. Okay. Sherri said that on the morning when they released her, she heard them arguing, and then she heard a gunshot, and then one of them took her in the car, drove her out to the spot where she was found, and let her go. She doesn't really know why. So, the police are now out there with a sketch of these two women, and everyone in the area is scared now that, there's Hispanic women out there going to abduct people and put them into trafficking. Now imagine that was in your town. You would not be very comfortable with that idea, People were scared. Now the police looked into a man in Michigan who they found that Sherri had been communicating with him right up until the abduction. And when they went to see him, he denied having anything to do with it, of course. And they checked, he was clear. He was in the clear. He hadn't done anything. They couldn't even figure out if he had, even met up with her or had been romantically involved, and he wasn't really saying. So that lead was done. So they had found some DNA on her body. It was DNA from both a man and a woman. And, they put it into the system, but they didn't get anything. Until August of 2020. So, somebody obviously just, joined Ancestry.com at that point, and it matched as a familial match with the male DNA sample. So, they knew that their DNA sample guy from Sherri's body was related to the person on Ancestry, and they figured out, however they do it, that it was this one particular man named James Reyes. So they went and paid him a visit. And at that point, he spilled the whole story. Okay. So he had been an old boyfriend of Sherri, you know, before she had been married. And she had been back in touch with him. She told him that her husband was abusing her and she was in terrible danger, and so he helped her to escape. He said for the entire 3 weeks she was at his house, she never left the entire time. She starved herself. She asked him to hit her, but he wouldn't. So she hit herself, you know, repeatedly. And she asked him to brand her. For some reason, he agreed to that. And he bought something at Hobby Lobby to do it with. And then at the end of 3 weeks, she asked him to bring her home because she missed her children. So he did. He dropped her off on that wherever on the highway. Go figure. So James Reyes, he, you know, figured out what was going on, you know, once he heard the news and everything. But he didn't want to turn himself in, so to speak, because he could get in a lot of trouble if they didn't believe him. So he never said a thing. And it doesn't seem like he's getting in any trouble, at least not that I've heard. Because his story, you know, they checked it and it seemed to make sense. So they went back to Sherri. They said, you know, here's the proof. This guy, you know, he told the whole story. What do you have to say for yourself now? And she said, nope, nope. That is not right. I was abducted by these 2 Hispanic women and blah, 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 blah. Okay. So it took a while, but they finally arrested her on March 3rd, 2022. Now, they came and she claims ambushed her in front of her kids to make this arrest, which she and her family were very, very displeased with. But here is what she was charged with. Making false statements to a federal law enforcement officer and mail fraud. She faces a maximum of 5 years and up to $250,000 fine for the first charge, and for the second charge she could face up to 20 years and another $250,000. Now, the false statements, we get it, right? She lied, or we're trying to prove that she lied to the law enforcement about where she was and what happened. As far as mail fraud, I mean, I guess mail fraud doesn't always mean what it sounds like, because I guess what they're getting her for under that category is she had accepted $30,000 in services from spent and the resources used, all searching for something that never happened. So she was released on $120,000 bond on March 8th of this year. And she will return for another, pre-trial hearing on the 25th. But the statement that her family made was basically how they were very upset with the way she was arrested, and nothing really about whether or not she was actually guilty. Now, the GoFundMe money was never returned to the people, and the couple wound up spending it on credit card debt. So that has not yet become a thing, because people have not tried to get the money back as of yet, but I would imagine that's going to become some kind of lawsuit as well. Now, some more background information has come to light. For one, there was another ex-boyfriend who was dating her when he was 15 and she was 20, which is already a big no-no, but that's not the issue. She was a youth counselor at that time. I wish I knew what that meant exactly, but I don't. I couldn't find it, and I don't know if this 15-year-old was, being counseled by her or just a random 15-year-old. But they were dating. And he said she was just, completely a compulsive liar. He could see it as a 15-year-old. That's what's really interesting, She would always, go missing, not really missing, but just, not be in touch for a while, and then she'd come back to him, and she'd have a fantastical story about where she had been that he even knew was a lie. And he was an avid surfer. She told him she was a surfer as well, and every time he asked if they can go surfing, she made an excuse. And he knew she wasn't a surfer at all. But he said that when he heard what had happened to her back in 2016, he knew she was fine, she was not kidnapped, and it was all some kind of scam. He knew it. This guy now is a college professor, and he wanted to come out, to the public and say, I am not the boyfriend that you're all, hearing about now. I am not the guy, James Reyes, even though we look a little similar, but I am not him, so stop thinking I am, okay? And we also got some more information back in the year 2000 when she was 18. Her sister had reported her for kicking in the back door, and later that same day, the father reported her for vandalizing his house. No charges ever came of it. In 2003, her mother called 911 and reported that she was harming herself and blaming the mother. And also in 2003, her father reported that she had made unauthorized withdrawals from his bank account, but obviously, I don't think that she was abducted, but the main question is why? Like, what is the motive? I mean, she stole $30,000 in therapy. Can you imagine that you weren't even kidnapped, but yet you want the therapy for it? To me, that screams, attention. She wants attention, and that's what you get in therapy, right? You sit there and you talk, and someone listens to you for like an hour a week or whatever she got. So that's that one, because I just can't imagine if I were a criminal trying to get something by doing my crime, and then I want to get therapy for a crime that I never actually had committed to me. Like, that's weird. Could they have committed this, like her and her husband, who, by the way, he was cleared right away in the beginning, like they gave him a polygraph, and he passed. But could the two of them conspired this whole thing so they could do a GoFundMe? Like, I don't think so, because, well, I mean, I was gonna say you could do a GoFundMe for anything, but the truth is, nobody, like, they wouldn't get that much attention for it if it wasn't, a case that was out there in the news. So, maybe, but, I mean, there's no guarantee that you're gonna get a lot of GoFundMe money, and what she put herself through is pretty brutal, all those bruises and the starving and all that. Plus her kids. She has these 2 little kids who thought mommy was kidnapped for 3 weeks. Like, that's not okay. That's horrible. Horrible. Even though, like, the 2-year-old probably had, basically no concept of it, but they knew that the mother wasn't there, just missing their mother. I mean, I guess you can get over that, just like if your mother had gone on vacation, but the 4-year-old knew a little bit more. So, like, I don't know. I'm not sure that the GoFundMe was the motive. I mean, I would have to say that the whole motive has to be this crazy attention-seeking behavior. Like, just so pathological. Which just doesn't even seem like a good enough motive. I would think there would be, better ways, easier ways to get attention. But maybe she just really wanted, to be out there on the news and then come back and have everyone feel bad for her and everyone trying to help her, and just like an extreme amount of attention. I mean, I guess that must be it, because I can't really think of any other good motives here. But let me know in the comments what you think her motive was. And do you think her husband was involved? I kind of feel like there's something about him that didn't seem so honest when I saw him speak. Like, the clips I've seen of him, he just didn't seem like it just didn't seem quite right. Like, one of the things he said was that when she first went missing, his 4-year-old wanted to know what's wrong, and he didn't know how to